Yeah, I really like this guy.
Vintage tee.
Vintage
got the
tee,
pearls. I see you got the pearls over here.
You inspired me.
Yeah.
I felt like it was time.
Yep.
Have we clapped yet?
No, I don't think so. Do you want to call it?
No.
3, 2, 1. Yeah, every time. Welcome back to the Decent Human Podcast. I'm Evan.
I'm Jenny.
I'm Chris.
That might have been our best opening yet.
That one was like
That was pretty smooth.
no issues.
No issues.
Wow.
Way to go, guys.
It only takes 20 episodes.
It's actually less than I thought it would take. So to me, that's great.
I think we hit a milestone there.
We did. Now that I'm here, it has been a great week. It's been quite busy. We're going to get even busier. And yeah, man, things have just been kind of humming along.
Big budget commercial? Is that what it is?
For which one? For upcoming and past? Yeah. You know, it's interesting working with some of these bigger budget brands or bigger budget commercial spots and everything like that. You know, it's very different than working with smaller brands.
How so? Can you describe like the key like differences?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, especially with the small brands, usually the brands will have a much tighter relationship with the brand or company that they're working for, because a lot of times you're actually talking with like the CEO or someone high up in the company, whereas you're working with these smaller the bigger brands. There's a bunch of different people that they're reporting to, and they have actual strict budgets, and they have certain deliverable dates that they have to hit. And some of the smaller brands are usually, I'm not saying every time, but a little bit more flexible. So they might give you a little bit more lenience in terms of like delivery, what they're looking for, because sometimes their brand is still developing. Right. So they're kind of looking for your input, what you can bring as a creative insight to what their brand is about to become. Whereas
a big brand, they're already set in stone, like exactly who they are. So you have to, and also
much stricter rules to follow.
When you're working with a big brand, I assume that they're on a schedule because it flows through the whole company, not just like a small brand where it's just like, you know, if we're delayed, we're delayed. We're on our own time schedule, you know?
Exactly. And I wouldn't say every time, but bigger brands usually plan their content out much farther in advance than small companies. And so like, for instance, Cupcake Wines is what we're shooting with on Friday, and I'm super excited for it.
So we're going to have Cupcake Wines next time we film.
So much Cupcake Wines. And it's like their spots that we're filming aren't coming out until the new year. So we're getting ahead of it. So, you know, a couple months in advance.
Is this TikTok or what is this on?
No, this is going to be social media, in-store display, and website. So nice. We'll have print and digital. But like, for instance, if I'm shooting for another smaller brand, we'll shoot it 1 week, and then the next week it'll be out and posted. And that's usually how fast it happens.
But a bigger brand can take
typically
like months and months. Yeah.
I mean, even on top of that, it's like, because I know like back in the day when you and I were first working together, we shot Philip Hughes. Yeah. And Philip Hughes is a big brand. Yeah. But what we were doing was, at least remind me if I'm forgetting anything, but it seemed like we just had a deliverable date to get it in by.
Yeah, no,
that's
correct.
like pretty standard for a smaller.
For like
smaller
in the
brand,
content space, it's like the PR company reaches out. And
but there wasn't any like,
and then it's like
any kind of like rounds of reviews. Like, oh, you need to have it in by this date for a round of review.
You didn't get that aspect.
Oh, I didn't get that aspect.
You got that?
Yeah,
because I nailed it the first edit. That's why.
They do give you a round of reviews and whatnot, but if it goes well, then it's usually fine. Yeah. There's not like a specific date that they need it launched by. It's just like, oh, we want it by like October or whatever. Like we want it in this general vicinity. But I feel like the deadlines on bigger shoots are much more like we need it done by like this date, and then
it's even more complex than that. It's almost, you have to have what we'll do for the bigger shoots, especially. So let's use Wells Fargo as an example. So like once we wrap shooting, we'll develop a post schedule where we have to be available on the days, not for even like meeting or anything, but just to be available for edits. So like we'll book out 20 days of editing. And so
in case they go through it and they're like, change it,
or we're on call, or something needs to happen, and then we'll have actual strict. So we'll have like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, will be editing days, and then Thursday's round of review that gets submitted. Then it has the Friday is revision date for the brand, and then they'll have us return edits by Monday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is another full editing schedule, and then Thursday will be live editing session. It's just much more structured. Whereas kind of like the smaller brands, it might be, we need to make sure if we're shooting on October 1st, we need it in by October 15th for final delivery. So we'll send it over.
Whatever edits happen in between.
Yeah, whatever happens, it happens. It's not set in stone, and you have to be available.
Can I ask you a question? So working with Wells Fargo, did you come up with that schedule, or did they like implement that?
Usually, if it's so, Wells Fargo is interesting because it was 2 other agencies working with Wells Fargo that brought me and my team on, and so they had already set the schedule, and we had to fit into that.
Even take it back a step further and break down the chain of command, like from the top all the way to.
So I was at the very top.
So actually, it was like
I was actually at the very bottom.
So who's at the top? Because we know you're at the bottom.
So client will always be at the top, which is Wells Fargo, and they will have last say in everything, and they will make final decisions or anything. But for the most part, everybody else underneath will work together to make sure that there's very minimal feedback from the client. So in our case, it was Wells Fargo had their agency on retainer, and then they hired another agency to help produce it.
The agency hired the agency, or
an agency hired an agent. Oh no, Wells Fargo had their own agency on retainer, which is who they worked with, for most of their spots.
Yeah.
For this specific project, they hired another agency to help put it together, and then that agency hired me as a director. And then once we were like in talks, it turned out that I was going to be able to support them on the production side, so I brought in my team.
Sweet.
So there was 3 different agencies, including myself, working on one project, and client being Wells.
And that's that's actually pretty standard. It seems like a lot, but
this was the first time I've had 2 separate agencies.
Oh, really?
Usually it goes client agency me or client me.
I think I've worked on bigger, like big budget stuff back when I was styling, and it's always like multiple layers of teams and agencies. I think the bigger brand, everyone's like outsourced. So that's like, not to say that that's normal, I guess, but like to not be afraid of that. That's
and it's just like, I think it boils down to communication. As long as you have good communication with everybody, because it is a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Everybody's going to have feedback, so many different opinions, but as long as you can just let them know every step of the way. And I think that's key for anybody getting into this industry, is that don't hide shit. Don't try and get away with stuff.
You just have to be
Be open. And like a lot of times, most of the time, they'll be understanding.
Yeah.
But if you have a delivery date and it's due Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. and it's, you're not going to hit that, don't just not turn it in and be like, try and turn it in by 1 p.m. or the next day. Communicate it. Just let them know. Like a lot of times it works out much better than you would think.
Oh yeah. I mean, we delay even for probably nothing. Like everything gets delayed, and eventually we push it back, and it just kind of goes with the game of pushing stuff out. I think that there's like one point of like being on time with stuff, but then also like not getting so wrapped up in the schedule, which is my experience for where I'm at with work. That I'm upset when things change. Yeah. Because from where I'm sitting, everything changes all the time. So I can get really wrapped up and be like, I need this, this, and this. And then everything changes, or like things are delayed. And like, that's just like now a daily thing where everything, due dates don't even exist for me.
I feel like it's tougher when you're working with bigger clients.
Yeah, there are certain expectations that are set. So it's like, again, to kind of go back, don't be late all the time. Don't delay just because you're like, I can't do it because I was watching a movie and I just took longer. Make that a very rare occurrence, but when it happens, don't just not turn it in on time. Communicate that last little bit.
I don't know if we've ever said this, but communication is key.
Holy shit, it's so important.
Not even just in like business and work, but
Yeah.
in life, obviously. Relationships,
text
yeah.
messages, hearting, exclamation points, liking.
I always say this, like
That's my
I make fun of
communication.
your like hearting and your like that your way of responding, but like that is still better than not
Nothing.
responding.
Yeah.
Like acknowledging something
Yeah.
is 100. Even if you don't have an answer, acknowledging that the question is there
Yep.
and saying I don't know yet, but I will find out, rather than just ignoring and avoiding, because that just causes stress and like resentment on the other party, and then you have all like a whole host of issues. But if you just acknowledge what's happening and just be like, I'll figure it out,
Yeah.
I'll get to you
Oh, no.
when I can.
Yeah.
I would say one of my biggest pet peeves, especially on like emails and stuff, professional emails, is like when we phrase a question or whatever, maybe it's an uncomfortable like decision that we have to make on the shoot that's coming up, or a decision that has to be made, and it doesn't get addressed in the next email. I'm like, we need a decision on this.
Yeah.
Biggest pet peeve in emails.
Even if you don't, I mean, I think sometimes it's pushing people to like think about stuff, and then they don't want to think about it.
Yeah. No. Well, and then I'll have to like. Well, I also just like have to circle back and be like, "Hey, regarding
Yeah.
my email that I sent on this date, what do you think about this topic?" So that's why in my emails I usually like to bullet point everything. So if I'm writing something out in response, I'm like, if they have a bunch of questions, I write the question, bold it, dash, write the answer
Yeah.
out, and then I move on.
It makes it harder for someone to ignore a section of your email, because generally, like if you were to send bullet points, I'll respond in bullet points. And so if I leave one out, it's pointedly left
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
out.
And then I'll highlight it in red and yellow
I
and be like, "Hey,
purposely
this
left
one,
it out because
send
I
it
don't
to
have
you."
an answer. Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Like, you need an answer on this one. Circle it. Like, you
How do
forgot.
you circle in emails?
I'll show you.
Evan
I
found
don't
a
write
way.
emails.
You're still in Hotmail.
I just don't write in general. So there's that.
I know writing's hard.
I journal every morning. It's all scribbled.
Do you really
Yeah.
journal?
Yeah,
Do you have
I
good
really do.
handwriting, or do you have bad
When I
handwriting?
want to, yeah.
I've-
I could see him
But
having
when I'm,
really
like,
bad
Piss
handwriting.
poor
writing it to
handwriting over
myself.
here.
Really?
Yeah, it's
They
bad.
say actually smarter people have bad handwriting.
Well, Jill has really, really nice handwriting, and
As a nurse,
Wow.
I would not
she, when we were
usually in
kids, she
medical
would
field.
like sit there at the table and
practice.
just practice.
I did the same thing. Did the exact same thing. I would practice.
And mine was like chicken scratch. I don't like, it's so bad.
I'm just like, if I can understand it, that's fine. If anybody else can understand it, like even better. But I'm not gonna do it to please.
Do you write in
somebody.
like cursive or do you write
It's
like
half and half.
Mine is too.
What?
Half and half.
Half and half.
huh?
Like
What do you mean half and half?
Some of it's like
how,
regular
how I
letters.
feel at the time. I'm like, if I don't feel
You
like
feel a
moving
little
my hand, I'm
and then
like,
you feel a little
if
bit more
I'm feeling
rigid, and then
like-
you feel
Yeah,
a little
usually-
floozy, and
Some
you're
of
like,
my
just, like,
letters are
cursive.
regular, and then some of them are cursive. It just flows.
Really?
I feel like, yeah.
I write in all caps.
And you were judging us.
I write in all caps, so it looks like I'm yelling through the entire thing, which actually makes a lot more
That
sense now that I
probably
think about
takes
it.
you so long.
Yeah.
You have to like break every word.
It does.
Letter.
I'm really good at it.
Okay. Well, can I need a sample?
Yeah, we'll put it on. Have a
Jenny's-
side by side.
Jenny's
Jenny's handwriting, my handwriting, your handwriting.
I'm gonna make us do it.
I'm okay with
You
it.
better believe it.
I have all my practice samples at home. I can bring
Okay,
them
well,
in.
you can write a new one.
we should have a spelling contest.
No, I all failed that. Absolutely
I
terrible
think I
spelling.
went to like, I got second place in like a championship spelling bee when I was a kid,
Like how old?
like elementary school.
What was your losing word, and
I
what
don't
was
remember.
your? Oh,
I don't remember.
Evan actually watches it on ESPN.
I actually do.
He's
I think they're
interested in
super. Oh yeah, I think they're super interesting. Spelling bees. I think it's also because something I can't do very well is spelling.
It's just practice.
And it's practice, but I mean, yeah, maybe I guess. But I think it's so interesting when the kids are up there and they're like, "What is the origin of this word?" And it's like, it's Greek. What does it have any Latin roots? I'm like, how the hell do you guys know that?
Well, because that would affect the spelling.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would hope so. Like, I
Obviously.
gathered that. But it's just like how the origin would change how they would pronounce it.
Well,
So
I'm sure they studied.
whatever. I did get, when I was younger, this is a little side story.
Oh,
I would
another
get,
story. Here we go.
I remember I would get pulled out, and I thought every kid did this. Just want to read it, or like preface it. I thought every kid had this happen to them. My teacher would pull me out and be like, "Evan, go through this, and you read me a word, and I have to spell it." This is real true story shit. This
You were
is,
that bad.
and he would like go down, and he would go down the list, and then at some point I would start misspelling because it get harder and harder, and I start misspelling, and then he would like write something down, like, all right, go back in. I thought everybody was doing that. That was actually only for me.
Because you were just
because I was such a bad speller.
Why did you just not pay attention or like didn't care?
I just sounded things out.
So you're a phonetic speller.
Yeah, just like, you know, that sounds like that sounds about right. Necessary. How many C's and S's need to be in necessary? It doesn't make any sense. None of that is necessary. No C's and S's are necessary, and I'll just change. It just makes sense in my mind to write it out. And you know what the thing is? You could read it. You know what I'm writing.
King of spelling, right here.
Yeah.
Necessary.
So just spell it, sound it out. Maybe that's why I'm a photographer. And just take
You're
pictures
just
of
filling
it.
it out. I get it. That makes a
Thank
lot
you.
of sense.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're filling it out.
Thank you. Yeah. But apparently not everybody had to do that. That was to get me into like a special spelling class.
Well, here you are. You're
and
fine.
then we got computers and we got Word.
Now you
And
have studio
we got-
spelled
now I have that-
backwards, upside down on your hat.
Yeah. That actually full circle,
Did you see
dude.
the realization?
Full circle. Full circle.
The realization on your face.
Now
when
you could
you're-
just create a brand off of just
Misspelled.
Misspelled. shit.
spelling that how you feel.
That's what I'm gonna call
Spell
it.
how you feel.
I'm gonna misspell, and it's gonna be the brand name.
No, it's decent humans, and then you can
Sorry.
just spell.
Decent humans.
We keep
But I'm
trying to like deviate from the plan.
John's looking at us.
just
You
like,
fucked that
what
one up.
are you guys?
He was like,
talking
I'm gonna have a
about?
really
Alright,
good time editing
Let's
this.
go
with
back
you.
to cooking in the kitchen. How do you think Wells Fargo allowed you to be a cook?
Cooking in the kitchen.
How do you, yeah, you were talking about
What?
You were,
Many cooks
No.
in the
there's
kitchen.
so many cooks in the kitchen.
Out of all the ways to pull back to
Yeah.
it, like how is going back to cooking? You're gonna say going back to Wells Fargo, going back to big budget shoots, going back to last week, going back to cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
whatever.
it.
I liked it. I liked
Thank
it.
you. Yeah.
My butt
Why do you
hurts
think
so
Wells
bad.
Fargo allows you to be a cook in the kitchen?
Why does Wells Fargo allow me to be a cook in the kitchen? I mean, I guess I
value-
can understand that. That's pretty good.
It
yeah,
works.
I can understand it.
Do you mean like in the sense of like why
Why
when
he got
there's
hired?
so many people
like all the,
involved?
like the level of agent, like Wells Fargo agency number 2,
you
Evan,
Mm-hmm.
cook, and then
cook.
Evan,
Sous
cook.
chef.
So yeah, why are you over? Did they tell you?
Well, I think so. For this one, it was all TikTok specific.
Okay.
And so our content was to help kind of launch the TikTok, and they came to me because I have a experience with working with TikTok and social media and everything.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And so they wanted a commercial level production, but geared directly to social media. And what's really interesting about this space is that this is something that I'm starting to see a lot more of, is that these brands want to get into social media, especially like TikTok, whereas like Instagram, I still think there's a different way to do it than your average commercial. You still need to be much more engaging. It has to be attention grabbing. TikTok, even more so. And it doesn't work the same way that what brands were doing in the past, where they'd film a car spot on a commercial, and then they break it down and make a 9x16 version, throw it up on Instagram, and then people would maybe engage with it, look good, but it's not attention grabbing. It's not what the platform is meant for.
personable,
No.
And that's where I think this merge was, especially for Wells Fargo, was that we were bringing both of those concepts together. And so I really appreciated that they were able to give me some of that creative freedom to be able to produce these spots that were geared specifically for TikTok.
I saw some of that. You showed me some of that,
Yeah.
some of the clips, and I felt like it was more personable. It was more geared towards TikTok.
It
I
makes
thought
it more
was cool.
relevant
Yeah.
to what's
A bit
happening
more
now.
relevant, yeah.
So in that sense, you were like, cook, top cook, because you
I
actually
mean-
know how to make what they wanted.
It was like, let's say, I was trying to think of a good
I
analogy.
know I didn't have one either. Like as I was doing it, I was like, this sucks.
It's like a taxi company
Sure.
that needs a taxi to go. No, I can't. I got
No.
nothing. But they do. I think brands are starting to recognize that there is specific content for each one of their platforms. I don't think every brand has realized it yet and figured out what their voice is there. Panda Express is doing a really good job.
How do you feel about iPhone content versus camera quality when it's specifically
due to
for TikTok.
like a social platform.
Yeah, because I'm hearing that a lot, or just through a lot of just different people, they're saying iPhone works a lot more effectively than having a whole production and whatnot. Just shooting these spots.
For TikTok, hands down, I say iPhone or just mobile phone.
I would like to remember like one of the first times we were shooting one of our episodes and I asked you to take a video and you said, I don't do iPhone.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
So I do iPhone now.
For the record, you were totally kidding. But you were just being a diva.
Yeah. I just don't want to take a photo. Chris seemed bored. He needed something to do that day, and I was just like, just give it to Chris.
You're like,
Make him
I
feel.
don't do iPhone.
I can't. I just got a manicure. I don't touch phones. The thing, I agree with you that phone content shot on an iPhone, high quality. So it's not just don't do it with an iPhone 6 or 5 or something.
Yeah.
It needs to be something that's higher quality,
Shot in
4K,
60 frames, 4K,
all that kind of stuff. Because I mean, the phones nowadays, I mean, you can get amazing footage and the built-in stabilization. Like we were shooting for Panda, and like we had that DJI mobile gimbal thing where it keeps it steady. We didn't need it because the built-in stabilization was so great. But for TikTok, I really think that phone content works way better than if you were going to do a full-on production, for sure.
Did you see? Go ahead.
Oh, so you used.
We use phones.
Oh, you did.
You shot with phones the whole time.
On Panda, yes.
Oh, I
No,
know.
on Wells Fargo, we shot with actual cinema cameras. So that's where it was that merger I was talking about, where it's like traditional way of thinking with this new age of social media.
Did you try to push for phone on?
We talked about it. I did bring it up a couple times,
Yeah.
but I think it was just a comfortability aspect of it and a professionalism that there was a certain expectation of the traditional way of doing things. And I understand, and it'll take a little bit to get there.
But for Panda, we
used all phone, and it was and a GoPro. But I mean, it's all that kind of in your face. It feels like it's from the phone. It feels more organic.
Yeah.
I think
like
that kind of stuff is just first person perspective. It just feels so much more attainable and relatable when you're seeing a brand do that, and it doesn't feel so staged. And I think that's so important on TikTok, and I think even Reels nowadays. I think it's really important on that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a first time when they brought that up. I almost was like giving like a little internal clap because I was like, not many brands realize that.
Yeah, it's a little bit risky, right?
Yeah.
So going to work with clients, have you worked with clients that had more pushback and they're like, oh, we want it this way? Or the majority of them that come to you now are more open to being
What do you suggest?
What do you suggest?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. It's also being able to read the client and read the room and everything, because certain brands are going to be more kind of what we were talking about earlier.
Like buttoned up about things?
More buttoned up. Like Wells Fargo has very strict
guidelines,
which especially in finance. Like you have to follow certain rules. So there's certain things you can say, certain things you can't. With the smaller brands, I think they're a little bit more open. But, you know, I think being able to offer an opinion that is tailored to the brand, whether it's maybe the smaller brands that come with less of an idea, you can give them a big idea. Whereas if you're going to a bigger brand, and I don't mean to keep on bringing up Wells Fargo, or like, let's say you're going to work for Whole Foods or something like that. They already have something in their mind that works for them.
So if you want to go against that.
So if you go against it, they might not like that.
Yeah.
They really might just be like, you're not the person for us.
Have you been in that situation before?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I brought up Whole Foods for a reason. So I was I was up for a Whole Foods spot.
We shop at Erewhon, by the way, so
Erewhon sponsor us, and I won't change a thing that you want. But they have something in mind, and it wasn't necessarily that I gave a big idea or changed the concept too much, but they just wanted somebody who fit what the narrative that they were building. So with the work that I have, it doesn't show that. So if I don't have what they're looking for that specific content, I'm not the person for them. Whereas another person who only shoots what that concept entails, they're going to be like, that's what we want, because they already have their mind made up. They want that. That's who they're going to hire.
So now for you, are you going to go out and try to do that content to open up more doors for you.
Oh yeah. So like that's how I run my business since the very beginning. If I don't have something in my wheelhouse, I'll go create it.
Learn it, yeah.
And there's so many other great hungry professionals out there that are doing similar things, and I've been able to meet some really great people who are they're eager to get into that space. So we'll work together and we'll shoot spec shoots and we'll do high-end spec shoots.
Explain what a spec shoot is.
Just doing something for free.
And like learning
building
how to do
a reel.
it right.
Mm-hmm. Learning how to do it right. So if I want to shoot, like we did a spot for Monster Energy, and what that was supposed to be was just like a at-home shot on a decent DSLR camera, and it was just going to be a quick video. However, I was talking to the owner of an agency, and I was like, maybe we can parlay this into some really cool, like commercial level content. And what we did was we ended up using his studio, shot on a Phantom camera and a robot arm, which is usually at minimum like a $50,000 shoot, if not more, maybe even higher. And we shot this big commercial level quality for a small social media ad that Monster wanted. And so when we delivered it to them, they were like, this is amazing. But it also helped build our reel and help build the things that we want to start doing more.
Do you on that so you just did like a social media kind of like campaign, using like those big cameras and all that stuff that would normally have like a huge budget.
Huge budget,
Does
huge
that
crew.
shoot you in the ass then when you are like presenting what you can do to brands, and something like that production value has a huge budget, but then they're like, here's my budget, and they want that. Does that make sense? Like they usually have a smaller budget. The expectations and what they want versus what they can get.
That is, I think that's a tale as old as time for clients and agency, or like whoever wants something. You'll always get I want this, I want that, the big bells and whistles. There's tons of memes out there, but one of the ones I love the most is client expectations, and it's like the guy Ned Stark sitting in Game of Thrones, and it has like the full thing going on behind him, and it's like client reality. It's someone with like floaty tubes sitting on in like a little lounge chair.
Yeah,
and
John,
it's
we're
like,
gonna have to find that.
and it's just like that's a perfect representation because it happens all the time.
Yeah,
everybody wants the world there,
budgets
but there is budget constraint.
Yeah.
Now I think where Naka Studio, I don't want to turn this into a Naka Studios pitch, but where Naka Studios is sitting is that we're able to do a higher level production at less than an agency rate, but higher than your everyday freelancer.
Yeah.
So we're meeting that middle ground where you're going to get that cinematic quality, but not paying the agency, a large agency fee with that.
And why is the agency fee much more?
Just a lot more people.
Yeah.
A lot more people, a lot more overhead. So I'm not saying it's not worth it, but you're paying for a lot more minds and to be on a project when I actually think fewer minds will work. Too many cooks in the kitchen will delay things.
It's really messy.
If you have a solid core team that can work smaller, nimbly, they're more flexible. I actually think that'll get you better content and quicker. Whereas some of these agencies, they just take a long time and it costs a lot of money. Output's great, but.
And then on the lower scale, there's the creators, right? Because I feel like there's an agency, studio, creators.
Yep.
Which is, if they have a smaller budget, then they would outsource creators, which would make it a lot.
There's just a bunch of different tiers. So if you're only able to afford the single creator, and that's great, but that's the expectation you're setting for yourself is that you're working with a single creator. You're not bringing in the food stylist. You're not bringing in the wardrobe, prop, all that other stuff. You're just like, you're leaving it up to the creator's mind to be able to put this together. And that's where brands are going to these creators that have something that they see that relates to their brand. Whereas they can come to a smaller boutique agency like myself and be like, we saw things that we kind of like of yours that fit us, but this is kind of more our vision. Are you able to do this? And I'm like, yes, because we'll bring in the other people that'll help bring that vision to life. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Decent Human Podcast. I hope it maybe shed some light on some of the inner workings of everything. We talked about a lot of stuff today.
We did.
Yeah. Well, hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. See you next time. See ya.